Okay, so I think it's about time to start. Welcome everyone to the very first session of the BRC and Translation Manchester Innovator Training Scheme. So to kick us all off today, we've got Professor Ian Bruce, who's the director of the BRC, who will be presenting to you his thoughts on innovation in research. Over to you, Ian.
Okay, right. Thanks very much, Colette. I'm absolutely delighted. I think I saw 75 participants in the chat at the moment. So that's incredible. So yeah, so thank you all for joining today, and I hope that this is going to be a start of a sort of a successful series of events. There's going to be lots of opportunity to ask questions, to use the chat, and so feel free to sort of chip in with chat questions if you want. There's going to be several polls throughout the day as well, so you'll feel free to take part in those as well. So just see if my slides are going to move for me. Hold on. Yeah, so I'm just going to introduce this section very briefly. Whenever we think about innovation, I think doing this in Manchester is always it's quite easy to start this kind of thing in Manchester, because you'll know that Manchester historically has got a lot of a long history of innovation in many areas, but certainly when it comes to sort of at a civic level, if you think about the invention of the cotton jenny back 200-300 years ago, that really drove Manchester to be sort of the first industrial city, the home of the Industrial Revolution. The first railway, commercial railway, was from here to Liverpool. So there's been a real spirit of invention and innovation across the city at a civic level for many years. Of course, the first computer was developed here as well. You can see it at the Museum of Science and Industry. And of course, Alan Turing, I was just reminded there this morning that he's going to appear on the new £50 note, which is due out on the 23rd of June, I think is his birthday. But even more contemporarily, things like graphene. We've got 2 Nobel Prize winners in the university who developed and described the properties of graphene, which is on the cusp of changing all sorts of things in our lives, from medicine, computing, sanitation, etc., etc. So, and we've got the National Graphene Institute in Manchester, of course. So a real strong history of innovation, medical innovation as well, going through from tamoxifen all the way through to some of the newer medical innovations that are happening. And so Manchester also has a very strong, if you describe it as a healthcare ecosystem. And if you think about sort of the base of this is the universities. So you get 4 major universities within the Greater Manchester footprint. And then if you go through to the city itself, on the right-hand side of this slide, you've got all of the Greater Manchester localities. So you've got the trust, you've got commissioners, you've got primary care, social care. So that's where the need is. That's where the pull, if you like, for healthcare innovation is, sort of in populations, in hospitals, in primary care, care sector. And so that's the pull from the invention and the innovation. And then in the middle, we have been very fortunate to have a very large amount of funded infrastructure to try and support this research and innovation agenda. So whether that's the BRC, whether it's the Greater Manchester Clinical Research Network, the Genomics Hub, the clinical trials units, etc. And in order to try and pull this together, you'll have heard of this or heard this description of Health Innovation Manchester. And Health Innovation Manchester is a very unique thing within this devolved health and social care system. Because if you think of Health Innovation Manchester as the umbrella organization under which all of this ecosystem sits, because one can have a very sort of fragmented system where everybody's kind of running off in different directions. Health Innovation Manchester provides that direction and that umbrella to that innovation system, which then means that hopefully things can get through at a quicker rate to deployment. And the BRC, or the Biomedical Research Centre, is part of that overall ecosystem. And the mission of the BRC, I think you've possibly seen this before, is this mission of driving health improvements and lasting change for all. So that inclusivity, it's for population-based innovation, through to creative, inclusive and proactive research that identifies and bridges gaps between new discoveries and individualized care. So we have got an eye in the BRC towards that population need and that individualized, personalized care agenda. But if you think of a heat map of all the invention and discovery and development, the heat map for the BRC sits around that early translational step. Whereas let's say the heat map for the Applied Research Collaborative sits towards the deployment and out into the community piece. But the idea is that we all know where we fit in the system, then things can move through at pace. Now, when it comes to the BRC itself, we've got a lot of commercial partnerships. So if you look at the various themes, if you look at the various people within the BRC, we've got very, very strong links, both with big pharma, with diagnostics companies, with small and medium-sized enterprises, etc. And across the BRC, we have a very strong sense that we need to link in with other people to sort of develop innovation and take those forward, often in partnership with industry. And some examples of that, so you'll know that in cancer, we've got the first deployed proton beam therapy unit in the NHS, and it is the only one in the UK, I think maybe even in Europe, that has got a dedicated research room. So not only are they using protons to treat the next generation of and use that for next generation therapies, but also we've got a research piece within that that allows us to develop and work out what the next innovations are in proton beam therapy. And that attracts industry, and that attracts companies, and that attracts partnerships to try and develop that innovation. Also, if you think about the Stoller Biomarker Discovery Centre, a large proteomics facility in City Labs, again, very strong links with industry partners and SMEs, etc., to try and drive innovation through into real-world clinical care. And more recently, building developments with the UK Biobank and other publicly funded research infrastructures. And then we've also got a hearing and deafness theme. And one of their visions from very early on in the BRC was to set up a hearing device research centre, because hearing devices are used by millions of people across the country, and yet the standardization of those devices is not as robust as one would like it to be. So setting up a device research centre to try and evaluate devices as they're coming through. NHS love this, and have actually linked up with the Hearing Device Research Centre to sort of take things forward. But then also companies are beginning to come in as well. So innovation, linking with industry, but then developing our own innovations at the same time. And that has resulted in several spin-out companies and spin-outs from work that's been happening within the BRC already. So Inspiral Biomedical, not to be confused with a carpet manufacturer, is a company which is looking at biobank samples from rheumatic disease patients to think about how you can develop new biomarkers for rheumatic diseases, and Anne Barton and Steve Eyre lead that. The Mantra DX is a translational radiobiology company spun out, led by Catherine West and Julie Earlham. And again, this is looking at hypoxia biomarkers. Those were discovered in their basic science work, looking at hypoxia markers that have a prognostic value in the use of radiotherapy and other cancer therapies, and that's now been taken out as a spin-out company. And Skin Biotherapeutics, led by Catherine O'Neill and Andrew McBain, who work in the looking at sort of skin treatments, or treatments for skin disorders, and using that platform to take that forward. So several routes with innovation, research discoveries, sometimes working with industry, established companies, etc., and sometimes people taking those innovations out and spinning out their own companies. Now, Translation Manchester is funded by the Wellcome Trust Translational Partnership Award. So the Wellcome Trust recognise that there are gaps in translation. So often basic scientists are sitting doing really, really good work at the university, but then how do you take that out into routine clinical care? And often the problem for many in basic labs is you're not quite sure what way to take this for maximum value. If you look on the right-hand side in the NHS, doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals are often sitting in clinical situations thinking, if only we had X, Y, and Z, we could improve care so much. And so the Wellcome Trust realised that that gap needs filling, and they need mainly bridges and enablers to try and move things forward. And one way to do that is to get people together to sit and think about and talk about problems and how one might solve those. So this looks like a very busy slide, but I can tell you that this is actually much better organised in Manchester than it is in most places. So what you've got is, for example, the BRC, which sits at that translational border. So really what we're saying is we're looking at discoveries from university, from researchers, etc., trying to pull those through. But also, we do not have the expertise in the sort of the, let's say, the business development of this. Innovation Factory taking that forward. If you think about facilities to do your research in, the clinical research facilities are funded to do that. We've got the Pankhurst Institute, which is pulling together the discoveries from mainly from digital health and from, let's say, materials to try and sit at that interface as well. But the Translational Partnership Award helps provide the glue and the infrastructure that pulls that all together. And so this Innovator Training Scheme has developed pretty much as a discussion between the BRC and some of the NIHR infrastructure alongside Translation Manchester to say, how can we really help people to understand the pathways through from discovery all the way through to deployment in the NHS. And that's going to be about linking people together. It's about having conversations between clinicians and care providers alongside basic discovery scientists, and then looking at things which are good ideas, but the next step is missing. And then the question is, how do we take that next step forward? So expertise across this slide allows one to do that. And that fits very nicely with the Health Innovation Manchester vision. And in fact, Health Innovation Manchester, and I'm involved in Health Innovation Manchester as well, is trying to set up a more coherent description of, if you like, your discovery, development, deployment pipeline. So across the middle here is this notion of discover. So you discover something, it's a really good idea. You then have to think about what value that might have in the future. And often starting very early with that thought process helps you frame your thinking and frame your story. You then want to develop it. In other words, you want to say, I think it's a good idea. Everybody else thinks it's a good idea. We better take this out into the field and work out whether it really is a good idea or not. And you'll know anybody who's involved with drug trials, anybody who's involved in clinical development of everything will know there's an awful lot of things that fall at the first, second, or third hurdle. And you need to understand that, and you need to be able to fail early so you don't keep putting your energy into things that are not going to go through. So having a framework to do that is really important. And then once you've got the value of what you've done, you've proven that it works, you show that it's an important innovation, then how do you take that out into the community and apply it in the real world setting? So that discover, develop, deploy pipeline is actually something we do all the time. Now, of course, if you were to draw this properly, it's probably a loop, because of course, once you deploy something, you then say, well, that's made things 20% better. So how are we going to make things, how are we going to tackle the other 80%? So that takes you right back to the beginning again, and you say, okay, how do we refine this? And or how do we understand the resistant group, the group for which this isn't the right thing, and how do we discover the next thing for them? So think about this as a pipeline, but one could also draw this as a virtuous circle as well. The other thing to remind you, of course, is that up on the left-hand side, there are thousands of good ideas. And of course, through a matter of attrition, some of those ideas fall by the wayside at various steps. And eventually you end up with a number of scalable projects that actually go out there and make a difference. And we just live with that attrition rate. What we really want to do is to decide which of these thousands are really worth moving forward with and taking them through. So that's part of the process of innovation and taking things on. This works really well because, as I say, the importance of getting this all into a coherent pathway like this is that your decision gates or your decision processes allow you then to think this is worth going forward with, and you talk to the right people and then you take it forward. If If you think it's not worth going forward with, then you can set it to one side and refine further. This is a very sort of odd looking slide, but basically the importance of this slide is to show something which is sort of rather depressing when it comes to people. So if you take everybody who does a PhD, it's reflected that over half of them straight away move out into a career outside of science. I think many people come in to a PhD thinking eventually I'll run my own lab, I'll become a chair, etc. And the attrition rate along the bottom here of that academic route is absolutely huge. Of course, there's lots of people who go into early career and become perhaps permanent research staff and eventually leave the system and go to a career outside of science. Some move into other non-university research type posts in industry and government and research management, etc. But you can see that if one thinks only about research within a university setting, research within an NHS session, there's a huge attrition rate. And what that tells you is that there's a big brain drain there. And lots of people with very good ideas, very good thoughts, and very good inventions, they fall by the wayside. And yet a career in innovation, thinking about how one can develop a career in innovation, actually allows one to be retained within the invention innovation system, with often either personal or societal rewards. So if you think about that sort of pathway, and this is a sort of a stony path, I would have to say it's not easy, but I think if one thinks about the path, at least you know what you need to think about for the steps ahead. So creating an innovation with a potential to deliver real world impact, you want to then think about protecting that, because of course there are ways to sort of think about that are slightly different to routine academic practice, where you do a piece of work, you publish a paper, then it's in the public domain and it's up for everybody. So you have to think slightly differently. You want to do market research to think what's the target population, what's the market competition, is somebody else 2 years ahead of you in this already, and what you've got is not unique. And then what's the regulatory environment? How are you going to actually have to get this certified, etc., to make it a safe product, an effective product, or something that, let's say, will get NICE approval or similar in the future.
Three more partial tests.
And then there are how you take this forward. So you may want to link with industry and sort of work with them. You might want to license it to a company. You might want to spin out your own company, as we said, or you might want to say, well, actually, I want to work within the NHS to develop this within my own hospital, within my own practice, and then take it through from there. And so there are multiple routes. And I think hopefully what this training program is going to do is going to help map this. This is often called, I think, the valley of death. There's probably other words for it as well, but it's a very tricky path to take, but there's lots of help and lots of support within Manchester to help you through this, so you're not on your own. So I'm just going to hand over to Colette, who's just going to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the Innovator Training Scheme. But I think this is a really interesting training scheme that's been pulled together in collaboration, as I say, with the BRC, the CRF, and the Translation Manchester. And I think this is what we want to do. We want to be able to say there is a single unified route, training, support, etc. for this. But whatever part of the system you're in, you're welcome to join this and you're welcome to take part. And so it's meant to be for everybody in Greater Manchester who's interested in doing this. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions at the end, but Colette, you just tell me when to change the slide and I'll change the slide for you.
Thanks, Ian. You can change now if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thanks. So as Ian said, there's really many benefits to innovating and commercial working in research. However, we found that perhaps the traditional academic and clinical training routes don't necessarily equip us as researchers with the right language, soft skills and mindset that might be needed to deliver this kind of work successfully. So we partnered with Translation Manchester to develop this programme to provide a taster of the opportunities and support available for commercial work, which we hope will equip and inspire you to explore these alternative routes to impactful research. Next slide, please, Ian. The scheme centres around this webinar series, which we are launching today, and it will cover topics ranging from entrepreneurship, identifying IP, to using your networks to build new collaborations. We'll also be developing a parallel blog series with Career Spotlight, how working in this space could be a springboard for your career. Next slide, please, Ian. So today's session showcases the wealth of support available across Greater Manchester for commercial research. So to keep it interactive, we've included a few polls, so please do participate in those. They'll be happening throughout the talks. And we really want to just keep it light. There's plenty of time for questions. This is a training course, so don't feel shy. Please just ask questions. You can add them into the chat function. So without further ado, over to our first presentation from the guys at Translation Manchester. Ian, if you want to stop sharing your slides.
Oh, yeah.
So the team at Translation Manchester have been working with us on the development of this training course, and they're going to present to you today something about the translational landscape here in Manchester and describe some of the support that they can offer to translational researchers. They've got 2 polls, so please participate in those. Over to you.
Thanks, Colette. Can everybody see my slides? Yeah. Good, good. Hello, hi. My name is Alessandro, and I'm a translational research facilitator running Translation Manchester together with Becky, who will talk later on today. Our talk today is about the translational pathway that Ian has kindly introduced before, and how that could be really your route to generate greater impact. So Translation Manchester is a Wellcome Trust funded initiative. The funding comes through a Translational Partnership Award. Manchester is not the only university in receipt of that award, but it was one of the first, testifying how innovation is at the core of what the university does. And the whole aim of Translation Manchester, as Ian has mentioned before, is to promote the progression of research from the early discovery stage to the implementation and adoption into healthcare practice. We do this through 4 main goals. I will go through these goals one by one, or aims, if you wish to call them like that. And then at the end of this slide, if Jen can kindly launch the poll, and we want to know which one you think amongst these aims is more important to you personally and for your translational research. So one of the first aims is to support translational research and researchers by providing advice, direct support, and funding opportunities in order to progress the research. We also aim to connect researchers across disciplines, connect them with external experts that might fill that gap that is stopping them to progress across the translational pathway. And also, most importantly, we aim to connect them with clinicians that have similar research interests in the greater Manchester ecosystem. We also aim to promote the collaboration with industry, leading to commercialization of research. And finally, and this is probably the trickiest part, is we want to promote a change, a shift in research culture, putting innovation and translation at the core of the university values, and also to provide that alternative career path that Ian was mentioning before, where innovation can really be like a springboard to your research career. So having said that, it would be interesting if you could participate in that poll. Which one of these aims do you think is more important to you, to your research? So Jane, if you could launch our first poll, that would be great. So if you could take a few seconds to pick to answer the first question. Then we can discuss this at the end, and we can also discuss which of our activities are aimed specifically to the aims we describe here, and how we can provide you with the support you need to achieve that specific goal. There is also a second question, but perhaps for the second question, we'll relaunch the poll after I explain the different translational stages. They came up together, but we can relaunch it after, can we, Jen? So the results are coming in. We'll just give a few more seconds before proceeding with the talk. So we got half of you already voted. If you can have a look and submit, we will reach at least half of the people voting. We can proceed with the talk. That's it. I'll move to the next slide. We can leave the talk open for the people that haven't, the poll open for the people that haven't replied yet. But basically, taking a step back, what is translational research? I think Ian has explained that already in quite some details. But basically, it's the process of applying ideas, insights, and discoveries generated through basic scientific inquiry to the treatment and prevention of human disease. So how does that look like in a pathway, in a pipeline? But this is very difficult to do for different scientific fields in only one slide, but that's what we try to achieve in the next slide. And I think, Jane, we can stop the poll for now, and perhaps we can share the results at the end if that's okay. But by the look of it, it looks like the majority of you guys feel that the connection with other researchers is the most important thing, as well as collaborating with industry. So we can perhaps make that as a discussion point, either at the end of our talk or at the end of the day. But going back to my talk, we did put together this translational pathway that shows translational research as divided in two big blocks: discovery science to the left here, 4 stages from D1 to D4, and translational research science, which is T1 to T4. So again, I'd like to go through these stages one by one now, and then we can relaunch that poll at the end, and hopefully we will be able to take a snapshot of where do you think your research currently fits in this pipeline, and what kind of support is available for you to progress from stage to the next one, which is normally quite like a stepping stone almost to the research to the research path. So every research starts from the early discovery stage, a pure basic research to gain knowledge, that's D1. Then when you reach a disease focus, that's when you move to D2. Down here, there is some examples applying to different scientific fields. So you can have a look and see which one you think your research specifically fits in. To move to D3, normally you will have done some proof of concept studies, which then will get optimized when you reach D4. But it's only when you reach T1 that you get the first evaluation in humans of what your intervention innovation looks like. And that could be a first-in-man phase 1 clinical study, perhaps. And once that clinical study reaches statistical relevance, for example, with a phase 2 or a phase 3, is when you reach the T3 stage. And again, the obvious progression would be to evaluate that intervention more widely in a phase 4 clinical trial for a T3. And finally, your intervention innovation can be adopted in the healthcare system within the NHS, or commercialize, license, and so on, when you reach the T4 stage of the translational pathway. So again, I know you answered that question already, but we can launch the poll again, perhaps, Jane, and see if that changes. Apologizing for having to answer the first question again, but I think it should be a bit quicker now because you thought about what aims you believe they need the most relevant. That's fantastic. They're coming in quickly now. We keep that open for a few seconds and we move to the next slide, in which we really show you how it really looks like. So it's a pathway, but it's not linear. As the slide we showed you before, that was just a model. It is not necessarily going straight from, it doesn't necessarily start from D1. It can start from later on. It doesn't go in a straight line. It can go backwards. And as Ian has showed before, from thousands to tens, it doesn't necessarily reach the end. But our job at Translation Manchester is really to help you to go across that journey from discovery to innovation via translation. And we do that by exploiting the value of network. And Becky will tell you a little bit about that in the next few slides. I think we can close the poll now, and then I'll leave the floor to Becky, the other translational research facilitator.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to introduce the Translation Manchester Research Network. So to support researchers as they progress along the translational pathway, we've established this network, which brings together a broad range of organisations, groups and faculties within the university and across the Greater Manchester region. In the booklet, each of our partners gives a brief overview about themselves, how they can support translational research and ways of getting in touch with them. And you can find this booklet on our website or also in the link that I believe Jim will post in the chat for you. Thank you, Ali. Next slide. And so just some top tips on how to be proactive when you're thinking about translation and you're in those early discovery stages, because that's where it starts. So firstly, the unmet clinical need. You'll probably have heard this phrase many a time, but it's really important that a new innovation and that your research as it progresses towards translation is addressing an unmet clinical need. And the people who know what those are the best are the clinicians in the clinic who ultimately deliver the care. So if you're a scientist with a great idea, get in touch with a clinician who works in your field and discuss how you can best address the unmet need with your ideas. If you're a clinician with an unmet need because you're treating the patients and you want to implement a new innovation, find the scientists who work in that field and start a conversation. The other key group, patients and the public. So the clinicians deliver the care, but it's the patients and the public that are ultimately the end user and the consumer of this innovation and ultimately your research delivery into the clinic. There's lots of opportunities now to get exposure and have conversations with patients and public and get involved in engagement activities. So that's something to really consider and start early. Building your team and collaborating to expand your network. Translation is not just done by a team of scientists. Translation's got lots of different people coming in and out at those different stages as you're progressing along the pathway. So build your team, think about whose expertise you need, and we can help with that. So we can help you connect with people and identify new collaborators to make sure that your innovation, your research moves towards an innovation and progresses towards clinical implementation. Protect the intellectual property. It's not too early to have a conversation with colleagues at Innovation Factory around how you can protect your intellectual property that is arising from your research. Weigh up the competition in the market. Once you've got a clear idea about what your innovation is, whether that be a medicine, a vaccine, an app, a medical device, what's already out there? Who's already in the market? What's the competition? How is your innovation better than what's there? Or how does it complement what's already existing? Is it competitive? Think about health economics. For adoption into NHS, your innovation has to be cost effective. And a health economic study can really help you find out if that is the case. And we have lots of expertise in Manchester around health economics. Again, you will find some connections in the TMRN booklet, but also you can approach us if you want some more information on those. We have experienced health economics groups who have worked with NICE and other regulatory bodies. Reach out to the funders. The funding for translational research is a little bit different to the basic research. So the application forms might look a bit different with questions that you're not really used to seeing, but reach out to the funders. There's always a program manager for the schemes that funders are offering. Drop them an email, ask them some questions, ask if they can meet with you. Consider whether your proposal really fits what the funder's after. It's in having these sorts of one-to-one conversations with program managers that you really get a feel as to whether or not your idea or your proposal will be competitive for that funding scheme. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions of people, not just funders, but all people that are around in the arena that can support translation. And then have a think about regulatory bodies. So to get into the NHS, whoever the regulator is for your particular innovation will have to give it the green light, will have to give it the go ahead and say that it's safe and approve it. So it's not too early to just have a little think about who is the regulator for your innovation and what might they be looking for you to do, and think about how you can meet those criteria as you're doing your early stages of study design. Thanks, Ali. And then just lastly, just a little plug for some of the other activities we've got coming up at Translation Manchester. The best way to find out about these is to sign up to our monthly newsletter. And again, Jim will post a link for you in the chat. Just to touch on a couple of these. The Translation Manchester Research Network Seminar Series. We've had 2 of these so far, and the recordings are available on our YouTube site. We're inviting each of those partners that you can see in the Translation Manchester Research Network booklet to come and give a 15-minute presentation on how they can support researchers. We will be launching an early career researchers competition in the next month or so look out for that. Same goes for research impact training. We're developing that with the other TPA Welcome Trust sites across the UK. Informatics training, we ran that the last 2 years. Again, you can find some information about that on our website. And our funding schemes, the Access to Expertise and the Projects for Translation. These are our flagship funding schemes. They will run again in the summer with a view to a successful project starting in November this year. And finally, we'll be having a Translation Manchester Symposium around October time to celebrate the achievements of Translation Manchester in the last 3 years and the fact that we've been successful in securing a renewal and will be around to support translational research for another 3 years. Thank you, Ali. We're happy to take any questions in the chat and I'll hand back over to the chair. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for that really great talk. It was fantastic. We've had a couple of questions in the chat. One of the questions was, do you have to go from D1 to T4 in the translational pathway? I don't know if you want to expand on that one, Ali or Becky.
I'm happy to take that. You mean you need to do each step of translation in order to get to implementation? I would think, is that the question? Or can you skip some?
Yeah, I think that's what they're getting at, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously it depends on case by case. Normally you would be expecting to have reach those milestones in order to progress, but it's so discipline depending that sometimes it's very difficult to put that in that particular pathway. That's why we show that the specific maze-like slide, because we have seen discoveries actually starting from D3 because there was already a connection with the disease. It came actually from that end, from the innovation end, and then went back a bit. So the answer is normally you would expect to reach all these landmarks, but quite often it doesn't happen that way. And I don't know if Becky wants to add something to that, but basically it's a model, and very often you're able to put the specific research into a step in that model, but it's not limited to that. So yeah, we recognize that it's more complicated than that, and it's a model, isn't it?
Yeah, like Ian said, it's not necessarily just a continuum. It's a bit of a circular process, because you get your innovations to a certain stage and then you try them in the clinic and perhaps they're not really answering the question you thought they would. So that was a really good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a quick question. So you mentioned something around engaging with the regulatory agencies early on. And I think that's probably a topic that most researchers wouldn't really necessarily think about when they're planning their research. So do you have any more tips or advice, or are you planning any particular training around that people could attend maybe?
Yeah, this is certainly an area that we recognise as being an unmet need in the training of researchers who want to be innovators or progress to translational research. So we are planning to run some further training around regulatory bodies. And again, these are sort of unique to the innovation in question. So it might be MHRA for a vaccine. It'll be a different body for a medical device. So we're also exploring that ourselves and planning to run some training to communicate to early career researchers and all those wanting to do translation about the regulatory bodies and those hurdles. And the idea being that if you understand what they're looking for, you can integrate that into those studies as well. As you design your experimental studies, you can make sure that you're hitting those hoops that ultimately the regulator is going to make you jump through to get the green light and go ahead to patients.
Thanks, Becky. So if we don't have any more questions, we can move on to our next presenter. So that will be Kat Horner. She is joined us today from Manchester Innovation Factory, which is the tech transfer office at the University of Manchester. Over to you, Kat.
Thanks, Colette. Right, so let me just share my screen. Okay. Please shout if you can't see my screen. If not, I will carry on. So thank you for your introduction, Colette. So as mentioned, my name is Kat Horner. I'm a senior project manager in life sciences at the University of Manchester Innovation Factory, which was formerly called UMI3 for those of you that needed to make a connection. So essentially, the University of Manchester Innovation Factory is in place to support academics and clinical academics from the University of Manchester and their collaborators to essentially create social, economic, and really patient, I suppose would be quite a relevant thing to say to this cohort, impact. And this is normally in the form of either helping you to develop a spin-out company or licensing IP assets or intellectual property assets that you have created within your translational research. So just to give you a bit of an idea about the University of Manchester, in terms of innovation in 2019, it was 49th in the world, 8th in Europe and 5th in the UK. And if you think that that's just the University of Manchester on its own and doesn't encompass the rest of the innovators in the Greater Manchester region, if you think how high actually we would be up on that poll if we looked at us all as a whole. And we're pretty pleased with this, but we think we can do much better. And this is because we know that there's a huge amount of untapped innovation potential within the university and within the wider innovation community within Greater Manchester, particularly within healthcare innovation. You can see some stats that the Innovation Factory in the University of Manchester produced last financial year. I think really what's important to take home from here is that these achievements are not solely due to University of Manchester innovators going at it alone, and more often than not involve collaborations, which in this space, in this area that we're talking about, are very likely to be with clinicians, healthcare practitioners, etc. So why would you want to commercialise your research? Well, for a number of reasons, and hopefully I've captured a lot of them here. And these might vary from commercial reasons, such as wanting to generate money for yourself, the university or the UK economy. You might want to work with industry on the world stage, so not just within the UK. You might want to do this because you want to develop your research, or you might want investment from them. You might want to commercialise because of to get reputation or recognition of your organisation, the consortia that you're working with, a specific laboratory. And you also might want the opportunity to deliver societal impact, and also, as mentioned before, patient benefit, which I think is also very important, and we should make sure that we remember it. In addition, you might want to gain experience as an entrepreneur and develop new skills. And finally, and I don't think I've put it on this slide, but also because, well, I think it's exciting, and I hope this group of people will agree with me. So what support can you be offered to commercialise your research? So this is support that the Innovation Factory can offer you, but also support that other research and innovation institutes within Greater Manchester, including the trusts, Health Innovation Manchester, etc., would be able to offer you. So as mentioned, we can help you commercialise your technology via one of two ways. This is either by licensing your intellectual property rights or by creating a spin-out. So which route should you go down and why? Well, I've listed some common reasons as to why you might go down each route here, but to summarise, licensing is more common in situations where the technology or innovation that you have demonstrates some sort of improvement over what's currently in play, and is focused on a single application, which means that we can normally identify a company that it fits within the portfolio of. And a good example of a recent licensing deal you can see here, and this is a gene therapy developed for Hunter syndrome that has been licensed to a leading gene therapy company called AvraBio. And this is a really nice example, again, of collaboration within the Greater Manchester region. It includes assignment of intellectual property from Manchester Foundation Trust to the University of Manchester. And as part of the licensing deal, subsequent clinical trials from the development will take place within NHS trusts within Manchester. In terms of spin-outs, these tend to be common in situations where the technology is what we call disruptive. And what we mean by that is it's first in class or even first to market, I suppose. There might be numerous applications for the technology and therefore not a single outlet. And we also can see an opportunity for inward investment. So if we're going to create a spin out, we need to know that people are going to invest within that company to be able to keep that company moving forward within the right direction. Ian mentioned Manta Diagnostics earlier, but this is an example of a company that we've just incorporated, which, as Ian said, is essentially a test that can stratify patients into certain groups to help with sort of therapeutic choices, so helping with therapeutic cancer choices. And again, it's a nice example of collaboration within Greater Manchester, as it's been supported by the Biomedical Research Centre, works very closely with the Christie and continues to work with the Christie, and is also currently working with the Genomics Hub to develop its laboratory-derived test. So I hope you can see that these two examples are really, really strong examples of how collaboration within the Greater Manchester region is leading to some really, really exciting outputs. So you're not ready to commercialise your research yet. How else can you be helped? Well, the Innovation Factory and others can help you in many, many different ways. And again, some are listed here. For example, in identifying intellectual property, helping you assess whether or not you've got something that's patentable or subject to copyright or something like that, and helping you evaluate that intellectual property, doing some market research for you. Where are the gaps in the market? Where is the unmet need? As Becky mentioned earlier, helping you on the IP aspects of your grant applications, signposting you to industry or to accelerator courses to help you gain experience, training and mentoring. This course is a very, very good example of that. We can help you with project planning. So sometimes just knowing sort of what is your roadmap to commercialization from a technical perspective, from a regulatory perspective, and from a business development perspective. What hurdles do you need to overcome to get to that end point? We can normally get consultants to help with things that we're not able to help you with. And the Innovation Factory and other organisations around Manchester also have different pockets of money that can help you with things like proof of concept and funding, or sort of embedding yourself into the NHS, for example. And we can also offer advice, and I think that's just really important, that you should know that you can just pick up the phone or send an email, as the case may be, and talk to us. Our door is always open, and it doesn't matter what stage your innovation is on. Please just come and have a chat with any of us. And I also think something important to note is that nobody in the research and innovation sort of infrastructure expects any prior knowledge of innovation or commercialization, whatever you want to call it. It's our job to help support you and help empower you within this process. And we also don't expect you to give up your day job. And we understand that people have very, very busy lives. And again, it is our job to support that. I mean, obviously, if you want to, you're more than welcome to, and we wouldn't stop you from giving up your day job. So we have a poll here. So this is just to ask you, have you commercialised your research, and or would you like to? So I think there's a number of different options. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let that poll carry on, and I'm going to just tell you how. Oh, there we go. So it's in progress. So I'm just going to carry on whilst people are answering that poll, and just tell you how you might, if I can. No, I can't. Oh, yes, I can. How you might engage with us or others within the ecosystem. So it really depends who you're employed by, and I appreciate that there might be people within this cohort that don't fit into these two boxes, but please come and have a chat with us and we can help point you in the right direction. But if you're employed by the University of Manchester, please contact me or if you don't want to contact me, you can go to the operations team on our website and pick somebody else from the life sciences team to engage with. If you're employed by an NHS trust, you'll have a local research and innovation office that you can contact, or you can contact the innovation staff at Manchester Foundation Trust, and Katherine Boylan will speak a little bit more about that later on. And I think what's important to say is that we all do work together over the Greater Manchester region. So if you don't know and you're not sure, just come and speak to one of us, and we will point you in the right direction. So should we do the poll now? Is that okay? Do we have the answers to the poll? Okay, so we've got 10% that have commercialised their research, 71% that would like to, and 19% both. So it's really nice to see that some people have actually commercialised their research and they're in the audience. I have actually seen two people that I work with, Lydia and Jolie, within the audience. So hi, I'm hoping that you are two of the 10%. And really to the people that would like to, please get in contact with us. So please do send us an email, or just directly send us a message on chat, and we can contact you via email. So thanks for that. And in the interest of time, can I get closer? So I don't know why that slide is there. So thank you very much. And any questions?
Thanks, Kat. That was really, really great. It's good to see that you're engaging with lots of different people at different stages in the research journey. We have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is, I'm a PhD student contemplating applying for an internship with industry through my funder. This will involve developing a short-term research project with an industry partner. Is this something the Innovation Factory will be able to offer assistance with?
So I think that if you're a PhD student that's going to go and work with industry, I think if you're the University of Manchester, your first port of call would be to speak to the business engagement team.
Yeah, I agree.
And essentially, if there's anything that's going to come out of your research that we believe is essentially going to be innovative and so constitute intellectual property, then that's when the Innovation Factory would get involved to be supporting you. Do we have anybody from the business engagement team in the audience?
We do actually. Yeah, he's next up. So Chris Hepworth is the manager of the business engagement team in the Faculty of Biology, Medicine and Health. So he's up next. I did have one quick question for you, Kat. One of the things that funders often ask for these days is an exploitation plan when you put in your grant application. Is that something that your team would be able to help with, or do you have any pointers or tips that we can give to the researchers on how they could develop that?
So an exploitation plan says how you get from X to Z. So yeah, that's certainly something that we can help with. So I'm more than happy to sit down with people, and if it's very, very early stage, I mean, it's going to be a little bit vague as you're starting to get further down to market, but it's absolutely no problem for us to sit down with you and say, this is, you're going to have to go through X, Y, and Z hurdle, and and in terms of regulatory, business development, and obviously the innovator will know more about technical development. So that's certainly something that we can offer. We also have somebody in the team whose job is translational research funding, and so their role is also to support essentially the intellectual property side of any application, and will write letters of support, will write a section within your application if you need them to do, about how we would help you in terms of commercialisation, and tell them a bit about our process and the people that we've got involved in the Innovation Factory. So hopefully giving the funder confidence that if you did have exploitable technology at the end of it, that you would be able to do it, and you would have the support to be able to do that.
Great, thanks, Kat. And Kat and the team from Manchester Innovation Factory will be hosting another session within the scheme later on this year around identifying IP. Okay.
Yes, so Freddie's actually in the audience. I think he was anyway. So Freddie's our head of intellectual property. So Freddie's going to be running that course. I've actually been on it myself. So it's very interactive course. It's very good fun. And I'll also be there as well. So we'll be doing it as a team.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think we should probably move on to the next talk. So our next presenter is Chris Hepworth, as we discussed. So if you'd like to kick off, Chris.
I will do. Thank you very much. Just share my slides. Hi there. Thank you for that introduction, and good timing by the sounds of it, by one of the questions that came up as well. So I'm Chris Hepworth. I'm the Business Engagement Manager for the Faculty Business Engagement team. So if you weren't aware, there's a structure at the university where there are faculty business engagement teams, that essentially our role is we're the front door for industry to collaborate with the university. We're a £1 billion turnover university. If you're a business at whatever level, whether that's an SME or a blue chip company, how do you engage with such a huge institute and find out what academic research might be relevant to their work? Well, you come and talk to us and we try and facilitate that. So I'm going to talk a little bit further in my slides around what we do as a team, but I'm going to start with why we work with industry and why you should work with industry. And hopefully with you being on this call and on this training, you've already got that mindset anyway, but just to get that even further. So what is business engagement and why do we engage with industry? So I think this is quite a good quote where basically we want to put you, the academics, with the great ideas and the data and the academic knowledge, in touch with organizations who can then use them. So the organizations might have a skills gap or a knowledge gap, or they're interested in our innovative research where they want to use it and deploy it in their business. So there's a real importance around knowledge exchange, around collaboration. It's collaboration for mutual benefit as well. It's not a one-sided thing. There's got to be that academic input and that academic interest and that output that you're going to get from the collaboration, as well as the commercial benefit from for the industry collaboration as well. In terms of the term business engagement, that covers, I've alluded to it earlier on, but any size of business. So that could be an SME, that could be a startup, all the way to your big blue chip and your big companies. FBMH have a fantastic wide range of business connections already, and we have a huge portfolio of connections, whether that's with a particular PI or research group, or whether that's spanning the whole of FBMH and into other areas as well. So the university does have strategic partners that span across all faculties and all different research areas, and we do various different things with them as well. But the importance really is that we've got an opportunity here, and I'm going to say the word opportunity quite a lot in this presentation, but it's an opportunity for you as an academic, and it's an opportunity for the university to really branch out, either mature the relationships that we've already got or establish new ones, and get some great impacts case studies, get our research out there in the real world. But to do that, we need the academic input. They're the people that you're the people that industry wants to talk to. So we help facilitate that, and we give you the gift of time really in trying to facilitate the process. I thought this was a decent slide in terms of identifying, it's quite apt at the moment, that academia, the collaboration between academia and business has been brought to the forefront even more recently, and has really highlighted the importance of collaboration and the importance of openness between academia and business for a common goal. and that's what we do. This is obviously at a large scale, but there's a variety of different areas and research areas where this is going to be really important, and business engagement is only going to get more important as the years go on. So why do we do it? I'm not going to go through every single one there, but there's we can share these slides, I'm sure. But there is different positives around for you as the academic researcher and for the industry partner. So for you as an academic researcher, it's an opportunity for funding. It's an opportunity to diversify your research funding portfolio. That there is the possibility of a decrease in charitable funding, etc., over the coming years due to the COVID situation. So can industry funding be another option for you? Is that an option for you to look at that? But one thing I really want to emphasize on the academic side is that it's about integrating business engagement in your everyday research life. It's not about adding something else on top of what you already do. It's about looking at your research and looking at the next paper that you want to produce, the next grant that you want to get. Can industry be part of that? Not an add-on, like with everything else the university asks you to do around social responsibility, etc. It's not about that. It's about integrating it into research and translating your research through an industry partner. And I come on to other things like researching impact and superb case studies that you can get through it as well. There's a big part around career opportunities as well. So it gives you the opportunity to dip your toe into industry as well and see whether that's a future career path for you, and build those networks with industry along the way. From an industry point of view, I think I've alluded to it before, but they want to know your academic knowledge. They want to tap into everything that the university has to see whether that could be a benefit to the university. But as a business engagement group, we try and balance that with protecting your academic freedom and your knowledge and IP as well. And we work closely with the innovation factory around IP. There's another slide which pretty much encompasses what I've just said, really. For the university point of view, it enhances our university profile, our reputation, and it exposes our research out into the real world. But there's a few different points there around one thing that we really want to push is multidisciplinary work as well. With industry, it's rarely that they just want to look at one research area or one piece. So it's an opportunity to bring and build partnerships yourself with other areas and other research and academic areas across the university and work collaboratively around multidisciplinary and multi-faculty, division, school, etc. So there's an opportunity, something that the university is really driving. I use the word opportunity again, but I think it really is an important part. Again, expanding on the why we do it again, the research impact is a huge part to play. There is research out there that shows that impact case studies for REF and KEF, if you've got an industry partner, they are very well high scored. And they do provide absolutely fantastic case studies. And we've got some of those to share with you as well. We have got an FBMH business engagement brochure, which I can share if it hasn't been shared already, which has some case studies around the different spectrums of engagement points as well. So it's worth to note that there are different, a full spectrum of engagement points, whether that's from quite small projects in terms of time and commitment and funding from the business, all the way to huge centre sponsors and 3-4 year collaboration projects where it's fully funded. Another really pushing on why you should do it as an academic. So I've mentioned the access to and diversifying your research funding. We've got internal industry funding pots, impact acceleration accounts, proximity to discovery accounts, knowledge transfer partnerships with Innovate UK. We've got a team there that help and support that, and we've got an over 90% success rate on KTPs, which really helps with the knowledge transfer between businesses, between a business and academia. It's a source of new research ideas and projects. So businesses, although they want to tap into our innovative ideas and our knowledge, they also have some as well. So there's an opportunity to share and work on that and build our research into that as well. Networks I've touched upon as well. So there's an opportunity there to really, some PIs in this school have got long-standing relationships with businesses where they can just pick up the phone, or they can just build a collaboration pretty quickly with them. So we can help in developing that. And research impact I've talked about, and career development as well. It is part of something that can be put in your PNDR as well. So the business engagement is something that will be looked at in terms of your career and promotional track as well. Luke Giorgio is very keen to encourage that as something that is looked at in your promotional track. And there's a bit of a slide here. It's a bit of a busy slide, to be fair, so you can look at it at different element, but it does show that full spectrum of engagement points that you can have. So consultancy is quite a small element part to it, but it can move up all the way to your spin outs and your big commercial background. So it actually shows where we link in with the Innovation Factory as well, and where the Innovation Factory might come in on this spectrum of your career as well. I just wanted to demonstrate this picture really. I quite like this one because it shows how close we are to businesses and how well placed we are to engage with businesses, and industry do like to see this, how close we are to the hospitals and the samples that they might get, be able to get, and then to the city centre, and then the diverse population that surrounds us as well. Only next door is to the university is one of the most disadvantaged areas in the UK. So in terms of that diverse population and that test bed for businesses to come and collaborate with us, they do like to see this. Time for a bit of a poll, if I may, before I go on to what we do. So one of the things that we always want to understand is what are the barriers to you working with industry partners. And it'd be really interesting to understand. We think we've got an inkling of them, and it might be all of them. I'll just leave it for 1 minute. So identifying correct partners is coming up as quite high. That is something that we can help with. I mentioned that we've got a portfolio of industry partners at the university, and we do have some strategic partners in FBMH as well, where I can, myself and my team can reach out to them with proposals of research. They're quite open to ad hoc approaches if it's a particular area of interest to the business. So thank you very much for that. It looks like identifying correct partners and funding. So I'm not surprised by that, and that is something that we can look at. So if I move on to the next slide, if I can, it moves on quite well to where we can help with those kind of things. So these are just a few parts of the spectrum of engagement that we can help with. So commercialization of IP moves to the Innovation Factory, but we can introduce that. Collaborative research is the hotbed of what we want to do. contract research, consultancy. Consultancy services all comes through the business engagement team now. I'm conscious of time. This is just alludes to the brochure that we've got, which I can circulate, and this is it can be circulated externally as well. So just notes some of the areas that we can help facilitate. This is basically what we are. We're the front door to the university, and we want to bridge that gap between academia and industry. So in terms of what we do, we do the relationship building part of it, so we can give you the gift of time. We can understand the ways that the business work and the way that academia work, and try and balance the two conflicting priorities sometimes by identifying those mutual needs. So for you, it's important to understand and for you to look at the opportunities within your research. If you're struggling to look at the opportunities and you can't really see where your research might be relevant to industry, then please contact us and we might be able to help see through that and suggest some areas. This is just demonstrating the importance of business engagement being part of research. So in March 2020, we became part of the RS&I team, so not a separate element. So we are part of the whole transitional pathway. This is how the team sits at the moment. We've just recruited for a new business engagement officer. So if you are academic in the university, then these are your first point of contacts within your school. So please do reach out to us, drop us a line. We're quite happy to meet you at any point, just for a chat or advice, or just to see where we can help you. Now, you also have some academic business engagement leads. So these are in charge to work with us and try and facilitate academic engagement within their schools as well. So please either reach out to us, or you can reach out to your academic business engagement leads as well if you didn't know that they exist already. And one thing that I really want to emphasize is the importance of contacting us as early as possible. It's really important that we get involved at the earliest point to help with discussions, help with collaborations, help with negotiations. So I cannot stress this enough. It's really important. We're there to help. So please do contact us. And done.
Thanks very much, Chris. That was really, really great talk. Time is ticking on, so I think we'll push on to the next talk now, because we do have another speaker. We've got Katherine Boylan, who is Head of Innovation at Manchester Foundation Health Trust. So over to you, Katherine. We can always ask some questions in the chat and at the end.
Thanks, Colette. I will attempt to share my slides. Bear with me. Thanks. I hope you can all see that. So as Colette said, my name's Katherine Boylan. I'm the Head of Innovation in Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you might work with and within the NHS. So within my talk today, I'm going to explain where innovation sits within the NHS, or at least within MFT, by highlighting a couple of facts and figures about the R&I department here in the Trust. I'm going to explain who you can go to for support, describe what type of activities that we support with some examples. I'm going to highlight how you might best access this support, and then I'll just finish with a few thoughts about the benefits of innovation, but specific to the NHS context. So innovation in MFT, surprisingly, sits within the research and innovation function within the Trust. MFT is the largest UK NHS trust, and accordingly, MFT R&I represents a significant undertaking with a £60 million annual turnover supported by around 600 staff. The Trust recruits more than 20,000 participants to studies, to about 800 studies per year, and MFT R&I also hosts key NIHR infrastructure, such as the BRC, but also the clinical research facility, amongst others. So this scale and breadth of activity supports our R&I vision to deliver improvements in health and deliver patient benefit through supporting the development and delivery of new treatments, services, innovations, and other service developments. So for innovation specifically, our ambition is to become recognised as the UK's leading NHS trust for innovation and the partner of choice for industry. Innovation in MFT is structured as shown here. Unlike the university, industry engagement, including specific support for the companies that sit within the innovation district here on the Oxford Roads corridor, and also internal IP development and commercialisation, they're covered within a single team. For simplicity, I've indicated the team here largely in isolation, but we're very much part of the wider R&I function, which is indicated by the reporting line shown here through to the director of R&I, Rick Boddy, who also, as you'll have seen from Chris's talk, has a role within the university, and the managing director of R&I. And we also, of course, have key linkages with other functions across the trust outside of R&I, the commercial function being one of them. We're a small team, currently 6 people, including myself, although we're currently recruiting, if you're interested in joining the team as our lead for the Diagnostics and Technology Accelerator. And here are the names and the faces of the people who really do the hard work within the team. Some of them I'm sure will be familiar to you. So our work streams within the team, within innovation, are diverse, and because we're a small team, and because these kind of work streams are very much interrelated, the team works flexibly across these areas because of the nature of what we need to do, although obviously specific team members have certain strengths and areas of focus. So we have specific expertise within the team for supporting intellectual property arising from MFT colleagues and supporting that through to commercialisation. And Kat provided an excellent overview of the commercialisation pathway and support across this, which absolutely mirrors the MFT process and support available from our side as well. A large area of our activity is around supporting and growing our strategic partnerships with a strong focus on developing further commercial interactions. We already have some well-developed commercial partnerships with industry, and we have others in the pipeline, and we're keen to kind of lever these for the benefit of the wider clinical community within the trust and potentially also the university. And we're also, mindful that we really optimise our relationship with other stakeholders, such as the university, Health Innovation Manchester, other leading clinical and academic centres outside of Manchester as well. In addition, a number of strategic programmes fall under our portfolio, so notably the MFT Diagnostics and Technology Accelerator, or DITA, which supports evidence generation for commercially supplied medtech, the Clinical Data Science Unit, which facilitates the provision of clinical data for research, innovation and commercial projects. And we have an ambition to grow further and deliver strategic funding, in particular funding linked to the government life sciences strategy and programme and centre level type funding. We also support the development of the Innovation District via our joint venture with Bruntwood SciTech. And an increasing growth area is developing a support framework for the adoption of new technologies. And this being, due to a recognition really that this is still a bit of a gap in support really, and because it falls between different functions across the trust. So that's all very well, and these are all very kind of high level areas of activity, but what does this actually mean in terms of what we do? So we work with MFT staff to support development of their IP through commercialisation, with patient benefit obviously being a key outcome. This particular innovation, which was got some press a few months ago, is a surgical device for use in paediatrics. And this innovation was developed with Lucid, a local company who are co-located within Manchester Science Park. So it shows that kind of interrelated nature of our activities, spanning across to that support for the Innovation District as well. Success around these type of projects is reliant on best practice working with our key partners, such as the university, which is why we put a lot of time and effort over the past few months into refreshing the principles around how we work with the university around IP and commercialization specifically. As I mentioned, another priority is to build further strategic programs of work, particularly linked to government life sciences industrial strategy funding, such as the iDeliver program. Success in this particular funding bid was undoubtedly in part because of the collaboration between the university and MFT, and also the industry partners that form part of this consortium. Speaking of which, that particular project was also built on a long-standing relationship with a strategic partner, GE Healthcare, with whom we have an MOU around joint working for mutual benefit. So Chris made the point a number of times that these things have to be around mutual benefit for both the commercial partner and also MFT in our case. In terms of the Innovation District, work continues to further populate the City Labs developments on the Oxford Road campus. So QIAGEN's decision to take the whole of City Labs 2, shown in a press release here, demonstrates how QIAGEN view the importance of that triangulation between the NHS, industry and local academic expertise. And we're currently working with QIAGEN to help them realise that benefit through establishing a collaboration framework which will facilitate the identification and setup of joint projects. In short, co-location on the clinical campus fosters further opportunities for both company and the NHS, as demonstrated by a recent piece of news around our collaboration with Your Gene Health. And I think we have a couple of colleagues from Your Gene on the webinar today. And as part of our ongoing digital transformation across the Trust, much activity is focused on leveraging the value from the vast data sets that we have, which is why we as a team are focusing on developing the clinical data science unit in collaboration with our colleagues from informatics. And as highlighted in a recent BRC blog from Ian, the value of this has been demonstrated through the pandemic as we brought University of Manchester mathematical modelers into behind the firewall essentially to work directly on MFT data to help inform the operational planning and forecasting for COVID. And so how to engage around IP specifically, Kat's very nicely introduced this already. Just to reiterate Kat's point that if you're unsure of who to engage with on each side, just get in touch with somebody. As I've made clear, I think, on my previous slides where I mentioned the MOU, we've made huge progress in the last few months around aligning our support. So regardless of your initial approach, if it spans across the university and the NHS, we'll ensure it's managed appropriately. And then again, you know, if you want to find out more about our strategic partnerships, some of the programs that we support, supporting infrastructures such as DATA and the Clinical Data Science Unit, again, just get in touch via this generic email address, or alternatively, you know, feel free to drop me a line. And so just really to finish, Chris and Kat made excellent points around the benefit of innovation. So I don't really want to replicate what they've said, but I just wanted to provide an NHS slant on this. So for NHS clinicians and researchers, working with companies offers the opportunity to co-develop and evaluate new technologies with potential ultimate patient benefit. Chris mentioned the potential to impact health and society through industry engagement, which is absolutely right. But of course, for the health bit, you really also need to be working with the NHS. Commercialisation of IP and ideas on a purely pragmatic point also offers the potential for income back to the clinician. And like the university, we have generous incentivisation packages to ensure that the income goes back to the originator. For industry can work with NHS organisations to generate the evidence they need to progress their products through access to the expertise, study design and evaluation, and to key opinion leaders on a consultancy basis. And of course, working with the NHS offers that access that Chris mentioned to samples, but also patient population and clinical data. And I just wanted to finish with this piece around the importance of place. So I think I've said it already, but co-location offers collaborative opportunities from both sides to allow access to NHS for expertise and facilities. And of course, specifically for the Oxford Road campus, that also means being adjacent to the neighbouring academic community. And the ultimate aim around this is job creation, wealth generation, and also for companies specifically access to graduate talent and other skilled workforce. And so that is where I was going to leave it. Conscious of time, I hope people are still with us because I can't see.
Thanks, Katherine. That was fantastic. It's really good to see that there's lots of opportunities to work with the Trust as well as the university in innovative projects. I've got a quick question. I know we've run over time, but the question I had was around funding applications. So I know that, the faculty can support things like KTP fellowships, knowledge transfer partnerships. Is that something that the Trust can also support?
Yes, in general, yeah, but KTPs are only available for academic organisations to apply for, but we're certainly in terms, there's other opportunities. So we recently in the very first round secured an Innovate UK Innovation Scholar Award. They're open to NHS organisations and individuals to apply for, and that the awards funding, kind of an exchange for one of our biomedical scientists to work within a company to develop a piece of their IP.
Okay, fantastic. I don't really think we've got any time for Q&A session, so I think we should just wrap things up for now. Thanks to all our speakers. I think you can see that there's absolutely loads of support available for people working in this space. So I think everyone would agree that feel free to contact them at any time. We have a drop-in session next week, March 31st, 10 till 11. Drop me or Jane an email and we'll send you the details. If you wanted to come in and get some specific support, we can direct you to the right people. And if you haven't already done so, please sign up to the rest of the training course. So you can find Eventbrite links on the BRC website. And our next session will be on the 20th of April, and it's around developing an entrepreneurial mindset. And this will be hosted by our colleagues at the Masood Entrepreneurship Centre within the Manchester Business School. So thanks again, everyone, for attending. I think it's been a great session, and feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions going forwards.
Thank you.
Thank you.